People always say that family is everything. But what they rarely mention is that the same family that warms your heart can also be the source of your deepest pain. My name is Helen Moore, and at 60 years old, I learned the hard way that decades of generosity can be repaid with coldness, and sometimes even cruelty. That morning, the sun bathed the rooftops of Cypress Shore, the coastal village I had embraced as my home after retiring. The gentle scent of ocean air drifted through my light wooden house, blending with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee bubbling in the kitchen. It was supposed to be a peaceful day, just another quiet Saturday, till everything changed. I opened the bathroom drawer where I always kept my pill organizer. It was empty, strangely empty. The small blue box with 7 compartments had simply vanished. A chill ran down my spine. I searched the cabinets, checked every corner. Nothing. I walked downstairs with my heart pounding. In the living room, I found my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, seated at the table with her laptop open, perfectly composed in a silk robe. Her fingers danced over the keys, focused as if every cell on that spreadsheet mattered more than any conversation. Good. Morning, Vanessa, I murmured, trying not to reveal my unease. You've seen a blue pill organizer? Left it in the bathroom last night. She looked up slowly as if my voice were just background noise interrupting her flow. Oh, that little plastic box. It was in the way of my skincare routine. I put it in the kitchen drawer. I already checked there. It's not. She sighed, visibly annoyed. Helen, maybe you left it in your apartment. Age can make things ... confusing. My hands tightened into soft fists. That phrase stung like a slap. Age can make things confusing. This wasn't just about a misplaced box. It was about something deeper, about control, about power. Those pills aren't supplements, I said, swallowing a growing lump in my throat. They're essential for my heart. She gave me a condescending smile, the kind that cuts deeper than any harsh word. Have you ever considered natural alternatives? My wellness consultant swears by essential oils and diaphragmatic breathing. I follow my cardiologist's guidance, I said firmly, feeling my breath grow heavy in my chest. I need them. I need them now. Just then, my son Lucas wandered into the room, still half asleep. I explained what had happened. He, always helpful, offered to search with me. We looked everywhere until a vague memory led me to run outside. To the trash bin, and there it was. It's the box, empty. My pills, which cost over $400 a month, were gone. Lucas stood silently. And me. I turned to the kitchen window where Vanessa stood watching us. There was no guilt in her eyes, only calculation, only coldness. And in that exact moment, I understood. She hadn't just thrown out my medication. She had crossed a line, a dangerous line. If this story is striking a chord with you, subscribe to the channel now. Sometimes what we need most is the courage found in stories that remind us we're not alone. Asterisk that weekend. I returned home with an emergency bottle of medication in my purse and a haunting feeling that something vital had shattered. Not just inside me, but between me and my own son. Lucas drove in silence, his eyes fixed on the winding coastal road. The breeze carried the scent of salt water mixed with the earthy perfume of damp pine trees. But none of it could calm the storm brewing. Within me, the image of that empty pillbox still clung to my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. Mom, are you sure it wasn't just a mistake? He asked, eyes never leaving the road. I closed mine for a moment. God, how I wished I could believe that. But I couldn't. Lucas ... You saw how she reacted. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was a choice. He bit his lower lip the same way he used to when he was a boy and didn't want to admit a painful truth. We said nothing more as the outline of my house came into view, carved against the blue stretch of sea. When we arrived, I stepped inside. Slowly, the wooden floor creaked beneath my feet, almost as if the house itself were trying to warn me. Vanessa was no longer in the living room. Everything looked too neat. Her coffee cup was washed and put away, the throw pillow fluffed. Even the vase of flowers I had arranged was gone. Intentional silence. I walked to the master bedroom. Her suitcases were packed. Last-minute client meeting, she said when I found her by the door slipping on her sunglasses. Wealthy clients don't take weekends off. You know how it is. She looked at me over the rim of her lenses, offering a half smile as cold as polished glass. Hope you've sorted out the pill thing. Take care of your health, Helen. It sounded like a warning. This was just the beginning. After she left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, trying to make sense of everything. The ocean in front of me looked peaceful, but inside there was a storm. She was trying to chip away at my independence. And I knew that if I didn't act now, it would be the beginning of a slow erosion of everything I had spent my life building. That's when I made my decision. My home, my body, my story. None of it would be up for negotiation. Asterisk, 2 days later. Still tangled in thoughts, and with my heart wavering between hurt and disbelief, Lucas invited me to dinner at their apartment. I found it odd, but I accepted. Maybe, deep down, I wanted to believe it had all been a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, an unfortunate coincidence, but that evening wasn't about reconciliation. If you've ever gone through something like this, if you've ever felt someone trying to quietly erase your boundaries, leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because sometimes clarity begins the moment we hear a story that echoes inside us. Mom, Vanessa had an amazing idea, Lucas began, with a kind of rehearsed enthusiasm. We were thinking, what if we made some upgrades to the beach house? Maybe an expansion, a full renovation, make it more functional. He spoke like he was discussing just another real estate flip, not the home I had built with sacrifice and love. We even have sketches, Vanessa added, handing me a folder filled with detailed blueprints. Her flawless nails sparkled under the pendant lamp, and her eyes gleamed with a kind of excitement that clearly didn't include me. I studied each line of the plans: a second floor, a brand new deck, a redesigned facade, the estimated cost $180,000. And how exactly do you plan to finance this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. We've saved about $25,000 so far, Lucas said. The rest. Well, we thought maybe you could use part of your retirement savings or refinance the house. It's worth way more now than when you bought it, Mom. My stomach twisted. For a moment, everything around me froze. The hum of the city outside, the clink of silverware. Even the ceiling fan's soft whir. All of it faded beneath the weight of that proposal. Wrapped in subtle pressure, you want me to risk my financial security so that you too can have a stake in the house I bought on my own. Vanessa leaned in slightly, her voice sweet but razor sharp. Of course, you'd still keep majority ownership, but we'd formalize our role. After all, we have plans. And the house is family property, right? No, it wasn't right. Suddenly, everything made sense. The overly flattering compliments, the stunt with my medication, the false concern. It was a strategy, subtle, calculated, but still a deliberate attempt to take something that wasn't theirs. Asterisk the next morning. Still shaken by their veiled proposal, I woke early to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. The scent of coffee filled the kitchen before I even turned on. The light, but the aroma, once comforting, now felt bitter. As if every familiar detail in my home was under threat from hidden intentions. I picked up my phone and called Margot, my longtime friend and a retired attorney. She had always had a sharp instinct for injustices disguised as kindness. I told her everything, the suggestions, the plans, the smiles. Helen, this isn't a proposal, she said firmly. It's a test. They're seeing how far they can push you. I nodded in silence. Sometimes the right words only confirm what your heart already knows. Later that same day, Lucas called. His voice was unusually soft, the kind of softness people use when they're trying to cushion something. Unpalatable. Mom, have you thought about what we discussed yesterday? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Yes, I have. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm not willing to give up my financial security for a renovation I never asked for. The house is exactly how I dreamed it would be. On the other end, silence settled in. I could picture Vanessa beside him, eyes narrowed, listening carefully to every word. It's just ... We thought it could be something for everyone, he said hesitantly. A legacy. A legacy isn't built by taking what belongs to someone. Else, Lucas, if you two wanted to be part of this, the time was when I helped with the wedding, when I got involved in the initial repairs. But now it feels like you're turning this into a business. Asterisk, the call ended without any sharp words, but a wall had gone up between us. And for the first time, I wasn't the one who built it. Asterisk. Later that afternoon, while sorting through some papers in the living room, I found a forgotten folder tucked on the bookshelf. It was the full renovation proposal. Inside were Vanessa's handwritten notes, calculations, comparisons with neighboring properties, seasonal rental estimates. Each page revealed more than the last. She was already treating my home as an investment. And me as an obstacle. The sound of light rain tapping the roof brought me back to the present. I placed the documents on the table and looked out toward the sea through the window. Everything was clear now. Right there in front of me, it was time to protect not just my home, but my peace. Asterisk after that discovery, the notes, the calculations, the coldly estimated figures. It felt like something inside me had finally awakened. For years, I had been the woman who always said yes, who gave in, who wanted to please. But now something had shifted. What began with pills in the trash had ended with my very identity being rewritten on a spreadsheet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house barefoot, the sound of my footsteps muffled by the carpet. The full moon glowed outside, its reflection in the living room windows like a mirror quietly watching me. I sat on the couch and pulled out a box of old photographs from the hallway closet. Each picture was a reminder of the determined Helen, the present mother, the woman who had built this home with her own hands. I saw little Lucas laughing beside me on some forgotten beach. I saw our first Christmas in this house with makeshift lights and a vanilla cake burned around the edges. None of that fit into an investment proposal. The next morning, I drove into the center of Cypress Shore and walked into this small-town security agency. Mr. Alvin, the owner, greeted me with his deep and gentle voice. "I'd like to change all the locks on the house," I said calmly, "and install a camera system, one I can access from my phone." He looked at me for a moment, slightly surprised. "Of course, Mrs. Moore, did something happen?" "Not yet, but I'm preparing for what might." That same day, I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer Margot had recommended. I arrived with a folder full of documents, receipts, copies of the deed, property records. I sat across from her and opened with a single sentence. "I need to protect my home, and maybe myself." The attorney listened intently. When I mentioned the medication incident, her expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed with concern. That could be considered a risk to the well-being of a vulnerable senior, especially if there's medical documentation showing the medication's importance. Senior, the word sounded strange in my ears. But for the first time, I wasn't offended. If that was the legal term that would ensure my protection, so be it. I wasn't weak. I was reclaiming my strength. That afternoon, I received a phone. Alert, motion detected at the side entrance of the house. I opened the camera feed and there she was. Vanessa, in high heels, trying to push the door open with an old key. She didn't know the locks had been changed. I watched as she grabbed her phone and began speaking to someone, clearly agitated. Her sharp, calculated gestures gave her away the unease of someone who was used to being in control. Not this. It was the final straw. "It's time to make it official." I told my lawyer that same night. "If it comes to legal separation or restrictions, I'll do it. For me, for my health, it's for my home." Asterisk, 2 days after Vanessa's failed attempt to get into the house, I got a call from Lucas. His voice trembled somewhere between shock and disappointment. Mom, Vanessa told me you changed the locks, that you're installing cameras. Is this serious? I took a deep breath. For a second, I considered softening my response. But that time was over. Yes, it's serious. For the first time in a long while, I'm protecting my home with the firmness it deserves. And I'm taking care of my health too. On the other end, I heard a long sigh. A heavy silence settled between us. Double quotes, this, ... This doesn't sound like you, he finally said. This is exactly who I am, Lucas. I just forgot for a while. I shrank myself to fit into everyone else's expectations. But now, I'm remembering. He didn't respond. And then he hung up. That afternoon, I received a letter bearing the seal of a law firm. It was a formal proposal for shared management of my property. A cold document filled with clauses that limited my authority and quietly paved the way for my power to be reduced, all under the pretense of family cooperation. I took the letter to my attorney, who read it line by line with unwavering focus. Helen, this is a trap, she said, disguised as collaboration. If you sign this, they'll have grounds to challenge your ability to make decisions in the future. And don't be surprised, they'll use this to try and take full control. My heart ached, not just because of the document, but because my own son had allowed it to be written. This wasn't just about property. It was about trust, and that trust had been broken. I issued an official response, rejecting the proposal, reaffirming my legal rights, and making it clear that any future communication must go through legal channels only, as expected. Vanessa retaliated, coldly. She began spreading twisted versions of the story among mutual friends, implying that I was confused, emotionally unstable, unable to cope with change. Some of those messages made their way to me, masked in thinly veiled concern. But I knew who I was, and that truth, in that moment, became my anchor. My attorney suggested I take preventive steps. She was the first to use the term familial financial abuse. It was hard to hear, but painfully accurate. We'll document everything, she said. Every manipulation attempt. Every coercive action. This will matter if we ever need to request legal protection. I nodded. It was hard to believe we had reached this point. But at the same time, it was strangely freeing to understand that naming abuse, even when it comes from someone we love, is an act of courage. Asterisk 2. Weeks had passed since I sent the legal notice. The house had returned to the quiet. I loved the sound of waves crashing, seagulls calling in the distance, the soft hiss of the wind sweeping across the porch. But now, that silence carried weight. The weight of a rupture, even if unnecessary. 1. On a gray Wednesday morning, I received a call from a local newspaper reporter. Her voice was polite but direct. Mrs. Moore. We're working on a feature about family disputes involving property and legal protections for seniors. Would you like to respond to statements made by Mrs. Vanessa Duran? My blood ran cold. Vanessa had taken her narrative to the press. What kind of statements? I asked, trying to steady my voice. She claimed you've been showing signs of mental confusion, that you've become isolated and impulsive in your decisions. According to her, they were only trying to help you manage an estate that, in her words, was being neglected. I closed my eyes. It was predictable, but it still hurt. I have documentation, I replied. Camera footage, legal letters, and medical records, and I'm willing to share them. I only ask that my side be given the same weight. It will be, ma'am. The truth deserves space. I hung up and called my lawyer immediately. She instructed me to gather everything, screenshots from the security system, the letter from the law office, all exchanged messages. We prepared an official statement with attachments. 2 days later, the article was published. To my relief, it was balanced. My statements, grounded in evidence, stood in stark contrast to Vanessa's vague accusations. The piece also included a quote from an elder rights expert who said property boundaries must be respected even within families. Love does not override consent. I received dozens of messages after the article came out. Some were expressions of support. Others were from women I'd never met, sharing their own stories. Stories frighteningly similar to mine. The difference: most hadn't found the courage to fight back. One message stood out. It was from Lucas. "Mom, I read the article. I'm confused. I don't want to believe any of this. But something tells me I need to hear it from you, alone, without her." Took a deep breath. My heart thud. "Ded. I replied, "When you're ready to listen without defending, I'll be here." A few days later, he showed up at my gate, alone, thinner, his face drawn. He brought a warm apple cake from the local bakery, the same one we used to share on Sundays when life still felt simple. We sat on the porch. He didn't say much. He cried quietly. "I'm starting to see it," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. "It terrifies me." "Seeing hurts," I whispered. "But it also sets you free." The weeks that followed were all about rebuilding. Not the house, it remained strong, its walls kissed by salt and sun, but myself. Inside, slowly, I began reclaiming the pieces that had been erased by time, by guilt, by the need to always be agreeable. Lucas started visiting me again, little by little. He brought wildflowers picked from the roadside, small gestures that reminded me that, despite everything, there was still love. A love that needed to be retaught, reborn with new roots, stronger, truer, and free of poison. Vanessa tried to strike back. She sent another legal notice, this time through a different attorney, an attempt to rewrite the story. But this time, the facts spoke for me. And so did my legal team. The judge denied any interference with my property. The ruling was clear. The petitioner remains lucid, financially independent, and legally protected. There is no indication of incapacity or negligence. I tucked that decision away like a medal. Not for the victory itself, but for the recognition of my autonomy. Not long after, Lucas called. His voice was different. Double quotes, "Mom, ... I filed for divorce." I closed my eyes, a wave of both relief and sorrow washing over me. He told me everything. The years of subtle manipulation, the pressure, the fears. He said he felt at peace for the first time in a long while. "I don't want to live trapped in an image anymore. I want truth." "Then you're all ready." "Free, my son," I told him, "because truth is the key." Today, the house is still mine. But more than that, my body, my story, and my peace have returned to me too. I walk along the shore without guilt. I make plans without fear of judgment. And when I look back at everything I've faced, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude, because sometimes, when everything seems to fall apart, that's when we discover the strongest part of ourselves. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that their dignity is not negotiable. Because yes, you can start over. You can say no. You can be your own fortress. And most of all, you deserve to live in peace.